Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit, and I would request that you have a gander at the Metronomicon. I've still got a few things from PAX that I didn't get a chance to wrap up yet, and I guess that's fine, considering that these games aren't out yet, so it really doesn't matter if we're late with the PAX coverage. And I'd like to show you a little bit of Metronomicon, which was a very amusing little rhythm game RPG that I got to see at the show, and I was intrigued specifically by the trailer and the art style. I think you're about to see why. Note the animations. Note the wonderfully colourful art style, the detail in the background, and this silly dancing Death Knight thingy. So, this is by a company called Puuba, and published by Casino Games. Puuba was responsible for Concursion, The Weaponographist, not particularly well-known titles. And what we've got here is a rhythm game RPG. Now, the demo that I was given to try had a couple of different songs on it, and you have 4 characters. Now, they're supposed to be offering a lot more than that in the full version, and each of these characters has a number of different skills that are activated by successfully completing the rhythm game challenges, as you can see right there. There are different levels of skill, and the more successful you are in terms of nailing those notes, the more powerful skill you can cast. Although in some situations, it's not just the straight upgrade in power, it's a different kind of skill entirely. So if you note what I'm sort of doing here, I'm switching between these 4 different characters, and every time I reach one of those wavy lines, it's going to take me to the next tier of skill. So I cast Flame on the enemy right there. I could go all the way up to an Electrical Burst at the end. Here I used Taunt on my warrior, and that's not necessarily a worse skill than the one previous to that, it's just a different skill. In the meantime, we are, of course, dealing with dancing ghostly swordsmen and all sorts of ridiculous nonsense, all tied in quite nicely to the songs in the background. And the switching between the different characters is what makes the game tricky. This is not the most difficult mode. I will show you a little bit of footage of the more difficult mode and me getting absolutely crushed by it for the most part. But this reminds me a lot of Sequence, which is now known as Before the Echo, which was, again, a rhythm game RPG, and you usually had to switch between different boards in order to activate different powers and so on and so forth. Now, this is relatively simple in the way that it plays out. It's fairly easy to understand, although it can certainly be mind-melting at the higher difficulty levels. You can see the HP of the party off to the side right there, as well as the score streak off to the top right, and, of course, the HP of the enemy off to the right as well. I absolutely love the enemy design in this game. That's what really attracted me to it. I'm not the world's biggest rhythm game fan, I have to admit, but I have enjoyed rhythm game RPGs before, Sequence in particular being one of them. It's not a mechanic that's been explored a great deal, but fairly similar to the Match 3 idea, which is now being done to death in many, many inferior clones of Puzzle Quest. It is something that I feel can work if it's done properly. And this is a fairly simple RPG battler. It does have an equipment system in it, and I assume it also has leveling up and things like that, but bear in mind, this is a very basic demo that does not include those. It does give you gear at the end, but you can't actually equip it. It does give you a little bit of an idea of what it will do, though. I also enjoy the fact that the various monsters are able to screw with your rhythm board using different effects and all sorts of things like that. There's the equipment, as you can see. So you get things like blind resistance. Of course, some of the monsters are able to throw out blinding attacks, which is going to make it a lot more difficult for you to see which notes you have to hit and all sorts of things like that. I didn't get equipment to work against that. I think there's a lot of potential to make a really amusing game here, especially if they stack it full of funny lines, good story. There's so many really awesome monster designs that they've got in the game already, and I just love how bloody colorful this game is. So I think there's a great deal of potential to write a very funny story and actually have some character progression and that sort of thing. You know, the core gameplay seems pretty solid if you're a rhythm game fan. We're going to play this one at a little bit of a higher difficulty level, so I'm going to probably miss a lot of notes here. However, I like the rhythm game mechanics. The songs that they've got in there so far seem to be relatively well scored and laid out, so they do match up quite nicely, especially on the higher difficulty levels. Yeah, it's a frequent problem with rhythm games. When you play a lower difficulty version of a song, the notes often don't actually match up with the beat and melody of the track, because in order to do that, they'd have to make the song a lot more complicated than that difficulty level would really allow. But at higher difficulties, it seems to match up pretty nicely. And of course, you have to hit multiple notes at the same time on some of these higher difficulty ones, which does make the whole thing a little bit of a struggle and very, very hectic. I would say, again, the game is a little bit brain-melting, considering all the stuff you have to pay attention to at the same time. I think for a viewer in particular, it might be a little bit intimidating, but once you get the hang of it and you start to figure out, right, well, these are what the characters do. Okay, I see my HP going down. I'm going to switch to the healer, throw out a couple of heals to get everybody back on board, throw out a taunt to make sure the tank can get a hold of it. It really is not that difficult. You really don't have to pay attention to all of the different boards at once. Really just one at a time is totally fine. You can jump into the sequence at pretty much any time. You don't get punished for missing anything that it was not on the active note board at the time. And as long as you get past one of the checkpoints, even if you do screw up, it will cast whatever the previous spell was as well. So it's a little bit more forgiving than it looks. But I think the base gameplay is solid. You know, this is the start of what could be a very interesting recipe, I think. Assuming that it's done properly, assuming that it has funny writing and great character progression to back all of this up. And of course, a good library of songs. Let me show you something a little bit harder just so we can end the video. I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say on it, but I'm able to handle this. Can I handle something a little bit trickier? Well, this doesn't seem to. Oh, God! The answer is bloody well no, I can't. I'm missing so bloody much. Oh, Jesus. Mind-melting, isn't it? Oh, that's not even half of it. They throw so many damn effects at you to screw with you that it's just an absolute nightmare, and then you fall to pieces very, very rapidly. Oh, dear. But yeah, it's got some potential, certainly. I'm interested to see how it develops. It's called the Metronomicon. It's coming out sometime in 2016. Dear Lord. Alright, my name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching it. Another game that we did check out at PAX East 2016. Probably coming sometime later in the year, so put it on your radar if you happen to be a fan of rhythm games and RPGs, because it's got a little bit of both in it. If you enjoyed this video, by all means do feel free to click the like button. If not, the dislike button is right over there. And I will see you next time.